In the previous module, we looked at what story is and how it's one of the fundamental things that makes us human. But how does this relate to us as individuals? Let's start by dropping onto the crest of that wave called time that the universe and everything in it is riding, which is today, now. The first time I thought of this, it kind of blew my mind a little, but I want to tell you a story about you and why the very fact that you're sitting there with your heart beating in front of your computer or device watching me now is, depending on how you view the world, either an absolute cosmic miracle or a statistically nutty thing, or both. You see, from when the very first life forms appeared on Earth about 3.7 billion years ago, and cells began to split into two from which all living beings are descended, if you take Darwin's view of the world, then this means that the very fact that you're even here, the very fact that you were even born, is due to how every single ancestor of yours, reaching all the way back through time and across different evolutionary stages of our own species, from amoebas to fish to monkeys, made it to the point of, well, procreation before they died. So just think about that for a moment. What with war, famine, disease, accidents, those times when we were very much on the menu of the food chain, or the fact that many children or their mothers wouldn't survive childbirth. With all these variables across history, you still made it. You're here. Congratulations. So the very fact that we're alive connects us to an incalculable number of people and beings, survivors across millions or even billions of years. So here's a short family story of mine that hopefully reflects this and takes us into the importance of telling our story. So during World War II, my grandfather was a teenager in the northeast of England, and he was making his way home from school when an unexpected air raid happened. Naturally, he ran like the wind to get to the nearest shelter. He got to a point where there was a building with a huge industrial chimney in front of him. Bombs were exploding all over the place, and he could either work his way around to the left or to the right of this building to get past it. He chose left, just as a bomb hit the building, completely destroying it, with the chimney collapsing across the street to the right. The fact was that had he gone right instead of left, he would have been killed. He wouldn't have met my grandmother, he wouldn't have had 5 daughters, of whom one was my own mother, and therefore I wouldn't be here now, and neither would my own kids. But this is just one family story of many, just even in my own family, where grandfathers either survived war or were killed in war fairly soon after they'd had children. And many of us will have our own near-death experiences too, where things could have worked out in a very different way. So whilst this makes the point of how we're basically here because of survival, it also makes the point of the importance of telling stories. Because for me, when my grandfather told me that story, it brought me closer to my understanding not only of his life experience, but also of World War II. It was kind of a personal family story of his experience, and whilst it wasn't one of Hitler or Chamberlain and Churchill, it was still very much a story that was connected to everything that happened at that time. A small but nevertheless powerful and meaningful story that for me rippled through time to connect me to that moment. Now, whilst this was an extreme example, I'm hoping I've made the point here that the stories of your ancestors is very much connected to the story of you. There's a snag though, because what little we might know of the life stories of our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents tends to fade with the generations, mainly because we don't take the opportunity to record them. Now, in the past, this wasn't really possible unless you were particularly wealthy, and whilst I'll mention this again later in the chapter, it was only because of wider access to education, where people learned to read and write, and organisations like Kodak, who made family photography and video more widely available, that we were even able to start recording moments of our lives. So far, I've situated stories being connected to ancestors and history, and whilst I think there's so much we can learn about asking older generations to illuminate the past for us with what they know of the lives and stories of our great-great-grandparents, for example, there's also much to be said about taking the opportunity to tell stories of the living, because we are the ancestors of the future. And the journey we embark upon to tell our story isn't just a wonderful trip into the past, but it also enables us to connect the past to the present and the future, beyond just names and occupations, birth dates, death dates, and short anecdotal stories that have survived the years. By pausing, reflecting, thinking, doing a bit of research, and by shifting our view from one that says, who will be interested in me, to actually my life is a story that is connected to the past and the future, we can start to see the beauty, value, and relevance, the greater context, meaning, texture, and symbolism to our lives, who we are, who we've been, what we believe in, our travels, adventures, wisdom, experience, lessons, skills, and stories that pepper our lives. Because who you are as a person, the choices you've made, and indeed the choices that have been made for you, are all part of the unravelling of your story over time. As one of my favourite writers, Don Miguel Ruiz, puts it in his book, The Four Agreements, every human is an artist, and our art is the creation of our story. If you think about it, story is all we are. When we talk of the past, we don't recount it word for word as it happened with every single detail. We either ad-lib or practice the telling of a story to make sense of it, and for ourselves and possibly others. We condense the past into stories that may be long or short. And when we talk of the future, we're in the realm of possibilities, ambition, dreams, hopes and fears. The future is a story that we're moving towards, writing towards, a story of what if, but yet it remains a story until and after it arrives. And in the present, our story is evolving and moving in a world where we're surrounded by the grand stories of the world, of politics, news, religion, history, science, culture and media, but also, and more important to me personally, the more grassroots stories of the people around us. These are the stories that I think are the ones that matter the most, yet somehow we've ended up in a world where we're more focused on the dramas of politics and celebrity than the story of those around us with whom we share a deep, meaningful and far-reaching connection. Now, you may not agree with some or any of what I've said here, but what I really want you to appreciate, if you don't already, is that who you are, who you've become is your story, and that story, you, is something that's worth recording, worth telling. Not only for the journey, and believe me, the journey can be magical, but to create the opportunity for the people around you and the people yet to arrive on this planet to create a deeper understanding of your story and also of their own.